The message came on a Tuesday morning. It arrived on every screen across Earth, Mars, and the 12 human colonies scattered throughout the solar system. The transmission cut through every frequency, every channel, and every device capable of receiving a signal. For 3 minutes, the entire human civilization stopped breathing. The face that appeared was not human. It belonged to something ancient, something that had conquered 1,000 worlds before Earth's first fish crawled onto land. The creature called itself High Commander of the Empire. Its skin was pale blue, stretched tight over a skull that seemed too large for its body. 3 eyes blinked in perfect sequence as it spoke in a voice that had been translated into every human language simultaneously. Species designation, human. Planet designation, Earth. You have been observed, you have been measured, you have been judged. Your expansion into the stars has been noted by the Empire, rulers of the Orion Arm, for 17 million cycles. You are given 2 standard rotations of your home world to present your unconditional surrender. Failure to comply will result in immediate and total extinction. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. Silence fell across humanity like a blanket of snow. In the hours that followed, panic spread like wildfire. Religious leaders called it the end times. Politicians demanded answers that no one could provide. Military commanders stared at their screens with hollow eyes, knowing that their weapons were designed to fight other humans, not beings from the depths of space. The general population looked to the sky and wondered if these were their final days. But deep within the United Earth Defense Command, located 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Admiral Sarah stood at the head of a table surrounded by the most brilliant military minds humanity had ever produced. They had gathered not to discuss surrender, but to discuss something else entirely. 2 days, Admiral said, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting across the world above them. They gave us 2 days. That tells us something important. General, a man who had spent 40 years preparing for wars that never came, leaned forward. It tells us they are confident, perhaps too confident. No, replied, shaking her head. It tells us they have rules, they follow a process. They gave us a deadline instead of simply destroying us. That means there is a system, a structure to how they operate. Doctor, the lead brought in from the Mars research station, pulled up a holographic display. I have been analyzing the transmission, the language patterns, the way the message was structured. This is not the first time they have done this. Everything about their warning suggests routine. They have delivered this exact message countless times before. And every species before us has surrendered, Admiral said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. They had conquered so many worlds that the process had become boring to them. They sent their warning, they received surrender, and they absorbed another civilization into their empire. It was as simple as ordering food from a menu. But humanity was not on the menu. Admiral turned to face the strategic display that showed Earth's entire military force. It was pathetic compared to what they imagined the possessed. 300 warships, most of them designed for patrol duties and light combat. 40,000 fighter craft spread across the solar system. Orbital defense platforms that could barely scratch the hull of whatever vessels the Empire would send. They expect us to surrender because every other species did, said. They expect us to calculate the odds, realize we cannot win, and submit. But they made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. What error is that? General asked. Admiral smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. They assumed we were rational. The plan came together in hours, not days. It spread through secure channels to every human military installation in the solar system. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was absolutely, perfectly human. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace on the 3rd day, they found something unexpected. The human fleet had gathered, yes, but not in a defensive formation around Earth. Instead, 300 warships had formed a single line, their weapons hot, their engines burning bright. They were not positioned to defend. They were positioned to attack. High Commander watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, his officers exchanged confused glances. In 17 million cycles of conquest, no species had ever done this. The inferior always retreated to protect they clustered around their precious planet like frightened animals guarding their young. But the humans were charging forward. "This is unexpected," said, his three eyes narrowing. "Open a channel." The communication link established, an admiral's face appeared on the screens. She was standing on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's flagship. Behind her, crew members moved with purpose, preparing for a battle everyone knew they could not win. "Empire," said, her voice carrying across the void of space. "We received your warning, we considered your terms, and we have decided to respond in a manner appropriate to our species." Leaned forward, curious despite himself. "You have chosen extinction." "No," replied, "we have chosen to fight. Your fleet is insignificant. Our sensors indicate your largest vessels could not penetrate our basic shields. Your weapons are primitive. Your numbers are laughable. What do you hope to accomplish?" Admiral's smile never wavered. "We hope to show you something you have never seen before. We hope to show you what happens when you threaten a species that refuses to be afraid." The line went dead. What happened next became known across the galaxy as the Battle of Human Defiance. The fleet numbered over 2,000 vessels, each one capable of destroying a moon. Their shields were powered by contained singularities. Their weapons could crack continents. They had conquered races that made humanity look like insects. And yet, the human fleet attacked without hesitation. 300 ships dove into the heart of the enemy formation like wolves into a flock of sheep. They knew they would die. They attacked anyway. Their weapons could not penetrate shields, so they rammed their ships directly into enemy vessels. They overloaded their reactors at point-blank range. They ejected their crews in escape pods and turned their warships into guided missiles. For 6 hours, the battle raged. Human ships exploded by the dozens. Pilots died screaming into their radios. Marines boarded enemy vessels through breaches in their hulls, fighting hand-to-hand against creatures twice their size. They died in corridors that had never seen combat. They died in engine rooms that had never been threatened. But they took the with them. By the time the battle ended, humanity had lost 240 ships. Nearly 50,000 humans had died. It was the greatest military disaster in human history. But they had lost something far more valuable. They had lost 600 vessels. They had lost their sense of invincibility. And they had lost something they had not felt in 17 million cycles. Fear. High Commander stood on his damaged bridge, staring at the tactical display with all three eyes wide in disbelief. No species had ever destroyed vessels in combat. No species had ever fought back with such savage determination. No species had ever been willing to sacrifice so much for so little gain. The humans had not won. They could never have won. But they had done something worse. They had proven that victory against them would come at a cost. They had shown that conquering Earth would not be the simple, routine absorption the Empire was accustomed to. They had made themselves expensive. Admiral's face appeared once more on screen. Her ship was damaged, burning in a dozen places. Blood ran down the side of her face from a wound she had not bothered to treat. Behind her, her remaining crew was preparing for another attack. "We have more ships coming," said, though they both knew it was a lie. "We have 12 billion people on Earth, and every single one of them is willing to die fighting. Your empire has 17 million cycles of conquest behind it. We have only 500 years of space travel, but we learned something in that time that you seem to have forgotten." "What is that?" asked, his voice quieter than before. "That some things are worth dying for. that freedom is not a gift to be given by conquerors, that the measure of a species is not in their technology or their weapons but in their spirit. Paused, wiping blood from her eye. You can destroy us, High Commander. You have the power, but you will never conquer us. And every time you try, you will pay a price. Today, tomorrow, and for however long it takes until one of us is gone. The transmission ended. Sat in silence for a long time. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The logical choice was clear. Advance. Destroy the remaining human vessels. Proceed to Earth. End the species once and for all. But was old. He had conquered hundreds of worlds. He had seen countless species bow before the might of the Empire. And for the first time in his long life, he found himself asking a question he had never considered before. Was it worth it? The fleet 3 days later. The official report to the Empire Council stated that human space was not valuable enough to justify the resources required for conquest. The report said nothing about fear. It said nothing about a species of strange, fragile creatures who attacked when they should have surrendered, who died when they should have submitted, who fought when they should have fled. But across the galaxy, word spread. Other species heard the story of the humans who faced thee and did not kneel. They heard about the 300 ships that charged 2,000. They heard about the admiral who smiled while her fleet burned around her. And for the first time in 17 million cycles, other species began to wonder if they too could stand against the Empire. Humanity never learned if they would return. They spent the next century building their fleet, preparing for a war that might never come. But they also did something else. They reached out to the other conquered species of the galaxy. They shared their story. They shared their philosophy. They shared the simple truth that had carried them through the darkest day in their history. That some things are worth fighting for, even when you cannot win. That defiance itself has value. That the spirit of a species is measured not by their victories, but by their willingness to stand when standing seems impossible. Admiral Sarah lived to see the beginning of the galactic liberation. She died an old woman, surrounded by children who had never known fear of alien conquest. Her last words, recorded for history, were simple. We did not win that day, we simply refused to lose, and sometimes that is enough. Across the galaxy, those words became a rallying cry. Species that had surrendered for millions of cycles began to remember what it meant to fight. Empires that had seemed eternal began to crack. And it all started with a warning that humanity answered in its own way. Not with surrender, not with fear, but with 300 ships, 50,000 souls, and the unshakable belief that freedom is never given. It is only taken.